Hello, everyone. Welcome to this VMworld Quick Talk. I hope you are all doing well and wherever you are in the world. We're going to talk about sustainability today. And for most people, sustainability is one of those words that sounds like something important and impactful. But if you ask the average person on the street, what does it mean? You'll get a lot of different answers if you get an answer at all. And interestingly, that's also true inside companies, for which sustainability could mean anything from, at one end, philanthropy and volunteerism, but at the other end, a fundamental aspect of how a company operates, from the products and services it sells to its relationships with its customers and suppliers and employees, to how it shows up in the world as a responsible corporate citizen. So today we're going to talk about what does sustainability mean at VMware, the kinds of initiatives taking place within the company, and what that means for its customers, its employees, and its business partners, as well as for the next generation of programmers and engineers, and what it will take over the next decade to effectively address the world's toughest social and environmental challenges. Joining me today are three of VMware's finest. Nicola Peill-Moelter is the Director of Sustainability Innovation. Victor Firoiu is the Senior Staff Academic Research Lead. And Jackie Barker is the Senior Global Program Manager for Strategic Programs at VMware's IT Academy. I encourage all of you to join in with questions. You'll see a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please join in. We'll get to some of those questions a little bit later on. But for now, let's sort of level set. I'd like to ask each of you, starting with Nicola, what does sustainability mean to you in the work that you do at VMware? Nicola?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So in my role as the Director of Sustainability Innovation at VMware, really it's about helping our customers decarbonize their digital operations through the use of VMware solutions, which reduce the amount of IT and data center infrastructure that our customers need to support their workloads. And this also, by the way, helps them save money in terms of CapEx and OpEx. So it has both sustainability and business benefits. So for example, without virtualization, you might need 100 servers to support 100 applications. Whereas with virtualization, you may only need 20 servers. So that's an 80% reduction in the IT and data center infrastructure to support those workloads, which translates into an enormous amount of energy and carbon savings, as that infrastructure is often powered by fossil fuel power plants. And even our customers who are already virtualized, we're seeing that it's helping our customers when they're doing things like consolidating data centers, moving their workloads, and deploying backup data centers to the cloud. That we're also seeing significant carbon reduction benefits in those types of initiatives. But we really don't want to rest on our laurels. We believe that there's still so much more innovation that we can do with an intention around sustainability innovation and carbon reduction. For example, we want to look at further improving on the productive use of that IT infrastructure for our customers. And one example is helping our customers repurposing stranded capacity, such as eliminating zombies, which are unproductive use of IT assets.
So we'll get to the zombies a little bit later on. It's a fascinating topic, but help connect the dots a little bit between virtualization and consolidating servers and decarbonization, helping customers reduce their carbon footprint, and I presume VMware's as well.
Yeah, exactly. So if you think about, oftentimes our customers are thinking about their applications, and their applications are running on host infrastructure servers, and those servers are sitting in data centers, and those data centers are powered by power plants. So if we know that workloads, the world's workloads are growing, and fortunately to date technology has been able to offset the increase in workloads by energy efficiencies and production efficiencies in the hardware and data centers themselves, but we're starting to kind of lose that. And so as those workloads grow, we need to be able to make that equipment even more productive so we can offset and reduce the amount of IT infrastructure, which then reduces the amount of data centers we need, then using less energy and carbon emissions from those power plants.
Yeah, but it's just to be clear, it's not just power plants, because there's energy embedded in all the materials that go into the data centers, the servers. There's water,
Oh yeah, there's
that may
electronic
cool this,
waste.
and there's huge amounts of energy embedded in moving, treating, filtering water. So there's a larger carbon
Oh
to
yeah.
play here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't even really mention that because it's so complicated just talking about the energy and carbon, but you're absolutely right. And if you think about with virtualization, as I mentioned, if you think about the workloads that would have been in the world without virtualization, how many more data centers we would have required, and all the material consumption and the mining of those materials and the land use and all the more to biodiversity loss as a result of those footprints, and even the number of power plants that have been avoided being built out because we've been able to pack more workloads on IT infrastructure.
Well, lots more to unpack there, but I want to move on to Victor and talk a little bit about the research side and how sustainability fits in and how you think about it in your work.
Thank you, Joe. In my role leading the VMware Academy program supporting academic research, we look at indeed the technology aspects of sustainability. So in particular, we see the objective of sustainable computing becoming a very high priority for many application users and data center operators across the whole spectrum from super big cloud to multi-cloud to on-prem. These are all customers of customers. So it's really a big priority and also very widespread. So why is this becoming such a big priority? So obviously we know that sustainability in general has been an issue for many people, but in particular the computation workload demand in data centers has been growing at a very high rate for many years, currently growing at about 25% a year. So now the global data center power usage has reached between 1 and 2%, it is estimated, of the total electrical power produced in the world. So that this has become a big deal and everybody's concerned. So on the other hand, a lot of work on sustainability of data centers has been done in the last decade, especially, for example, through virtualization of computation, for which VMware has been a pioneer, and also low power hardware. But it is now believed in many research and industry communities that most of these efficiency gains have been realized. Basically, the low-hanging fruit has been picked, and that now we need a second revolution in the sustainability of computation. Which is why very recently we have started a new partnership with the National Science Foundation in the US to fund research on the next generation sustainable digital infrastructure.
So when you talk about the higher hanging fruit, if you will, what are you looking at? What are those areas of inquiry that you see potential opportunities to decrease or at least maintain that 1 or 2%, even as the computing grows, as you said, I think 25% a year?
Yeah. So so basically, what the first generation, if you will, the last decade has focused on improving the efficiency of the data centers, if you want, on the outside of the application. So on the outside of whatever is computed in this servers and compute resources. Now the harder problem becomes how to make that sustainability improvement leap from inside. Obviously, people have been, application developers, everybody in the technical software development community have been focused on increasing the productivity, making software go faster from idea to development to deployment to production, maintenance. But at times, resources like CPU and storage were considered cheap. Well, there are some externalities, some things that were costs exist but are not expressed in monetary way. So that's the challenge now, to understand these hidden costs and to actually measure them. So one big technical challenge is to create this metrics and benchmarks that everybody can agree upon, and basically having the whole community coordinated to push for optimizing on sustainability from inside.
It's got to be a pretty big puzzle, because as computers go faster, and I know just enough about this to be dangerous, they go hotter, which means they need more cooling, which means they use more energy. How do you solve that? I mean, that just sounds like the more you do, the more you have to do.
Indeed, and you would be amazed if you ask a software developer, you would find out that there are a lot of opportunities to improve the efficiency of the computation itself. That is not easy, but on the other hand, there is a lot of potential to reduce the footprint, both in terms of computation and in terms of, as I said, storage, memory.
Yeah.
What's really critical here is that this would be the approach should be systematic, as opposed to I catch this opportunity isolated here, but I don't consider other things that may actually go hand in hand.
Yeah, great. Well, let's turn to Jackie and the IT Academy. Jackie, first of all, for people who don't know that much or anything about the IT Academy, give us a little level set on that, but also then talk about, where does sustainability fit in?
Sure, I'll probably answer that last question first. When I think about sustainability, I think about the resources that are available in the world, whether it's the resources in our environment, the resources from a technology perspective to solve some of those big problems. But I have the distinct pleasure and honor of working with people, which is a resource that I think is so critical to us as we continue to grow and expand. So the IT Academy program and our academic software licensing program, similar to Victor, I partner with academic institutions. We have about 2,500 schools who are participating in our programs today, from high schools to community colleges to colleges and universities who are participating. We have about 75,000 students have participated this year. And what VMware does is we provide not only the learning materials to schools, kind of the content that's aligned to certification or badging, but we also provide software. No surprise, we're a software company. Of course, we should be providing software. And what we do is we tap into that talent, those people, and let them create things with software. In a world where applications are being developed faster and faster, how do we give people the skills and the tools to create them, to have them figure out in their own communities, what are some of those challenges or problems that they want to have? Or when we think about what's going on in the world, there may be opportunities for people in their own neighborhoods to get the skills they need to apply the technology to make a difference in their world, which then makes a difference in our world. And that's what I think sustainability is for the work that I get to do, and why it's so important for VMware. As you listen to all my other colleagues talk about what we do, we leverage the technology that we know, and we apply it to solve some of those big problems that are going on in the world.
So the high school and college generation are obviously digital natives, but they're also climate natives, in that they've grown up in a world where climate change is more than a thing. It's becoming a factor increasingly for all of us, but particularly when they look at their long road of their future. Are they coming to the Academy with specific issues around either environmental or social challenges that they want to deploy technology to help solve?
Yeah, I definitely think the next generation of talent does have that mind for, how do I make a difference in the world, whether it's climate change or if it's kind of what's happening in their own neighborhoods related to food insecurity or housing insecurity. How do they apply technology to that? So I think students who are in the classroom, and I want to make sure everybody knows that a student in the classroom today, the average age in the US for a community college, I believe is around 33. So it's not your typical 18-year-old. So I want to broaden everybody's perspective. When I think about sustainability, it's not just developing the talent of 18 to 24-year-olds. I'm thinking about 18 to 85-year-olds. Those are the people who are making a difference in the world. And I think more and more we're seeing people recognize that technology is an enabler that will enable us to get that future that we want and to realize what's possible with putting our minds together and working together.
So listening to all three of you, you've got this great variety of different kinds of approaches, different kinds of strategies, different kinds of issues. I guess my question here is, what's driving this? Some of these things sound like they have some value to the customer, some it's less clear, but what is driving this? As we look across companies making commitments, engaging in sustainability, it's usually any of a variety of things: competitors, the desire for innovation within the company, customer requirements, sometimes fear of regulation, activist pressures, any number of things. I guess, what is driving all of these measures, if there's any common theme there? And Nicola, what do you see?
I see there's a myriad of things that are driving this. So at VMware, we have epic values, and I think it's really values for not only doing excellent engineering, putting forward excellent products, but really caring about our community, caring about the broader environment, and having employees contribute to that in their own way. And what I'm finding is that when I talk to them about sustainability innovation and what we're trying to do help our customers decarbonize through our products, they get very excited, because I think it's the first time they really recognize that they can continue contributing business value through the work that they're doing, but they can also make a difference in decarbonization. And as you mentioned, all the other benefits of achieving that. And we're also seeing, for example, if you look at how many companies now, especially the exponential growth in companies signing up for what's called science-based targets, and that's decarbonizing not only their own operations, but that of their supply chain. There's about 1,000 companies now, and these are very large marquee cross-sector companies that are signing up for these very difficult challenges, and they're all looking for solutions. And so I think opportunity out there, and for companies that are paying attention to this trend, they actually see a business opportunity. Traditionally, businesses have looked at things like climate change, and investors even, as a risk, like how do we mitigate our risks around climate change? But now the smart ones are actually seeing that there's an opportunity for building a better mousetrap, having a competitive differentiator, and selling into this new market that's looking for decarbonized solutions. And investors are starting to take notice. So again, they're not just looking for who do I invest in who's doesn't have risk exposure in, say, water, climate, or whatever, but who's actually building a better mousetrap and innovating around that opportunity.
Nicola,
go ahead, Jackie.
I'm sorry, I was excited by what Nicola was talking about, because when I think of, there's something in the culture of VMware, whether it's our Epic 2 values, it's our leadership team who constantly are reminding us about the power that we have as individuals and as citizens in the company. The whole concept of citizen philanthropy at VMware is strong, where, as Nicola highlighted, if you believe that there's an opportunity, you can actually use the tools that VMware has and bring that to bear in your local community and in your world, which to me is, I think, just a tremendous opportunity for us. And it comes down to the people. VMware talent is interested in making a difference in the world that they live in. And you can see that with the number of volunteer hours, the service hours that we have. It really is, I'm very proud of the company in that regard, because there is a commitment and a conversation that happens on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Victor, from your perspective, what's driving this push to sustainability at your end? Is it customers? Is it just the desire to always continually push the technology? What's going on?
No, it's not that simple. It's actually a community of interest from all the above places. To give you a simple analogy or example, it used to be until recently that people thought that boy, the real polluter is my car or whatever carbon-based power plant, and my laptop or my computer is clean. With the advent of big number crunching, data analysis, machine learning, big data centers now become really a big draws on global power, electric power, and that's not your no longer your handheld or your computer. So if you think a little bit in the future, people realize that the whole society becomes information based, not as much as truck based. So we have a real concern here coming up, which is why we really are very excited to look into this, do research into making the computation in general more sustainable.
So you talk about concerns. What are those concerns, and how might they negatively impact VMware if you don't sort of take the right steps?
Really, the concern is scaling. So when you scale things up, as in, you want a new, say, you want to develop a new vaccine, you need a tremendous amount of computation, as well as other non-compute work to make it in record time. Well, that computation is not just costing some amount of resources, as in dollars, but it also draws a lot of power and material. And really, the concern is, how do we scale that? And really, this next generation of sustainability is targeted to address this problem of huge potential increase, mitigating this potential large increase in power and material.
Yeah, Nicola, you mentioned earlier zombies. Explain a little bit about what's going on there and what you all are doing about killing off zombies.
Yeah, sure. So zombies, what they are is a form of stranded asset. And there's research been done in and outside of VMware that shows it's quite extensive throughout customers' infrastructure, because it's a very difficult problem to solve. There's technical and human components to the problem. And zombies are effectively virtual machines or servers that were deployed at one point for a purpose, and then for whatever reason are no longer being used. Maybe the person who was using it left the company or moved organizations, or maybe the project ended, but nobody bothered to deprecate that virtual machine or tell the IT that server could be repurposed. And so there's a lot of CPU and storage and memory that's sort of bound up in these zombies that are not available for productive workloads. And we're not talking about sort of excess capacity or underutilization. This is actually assets that just aren't being used. They were long forgotten. And they also have kind of security implications as well for an organization. And so we believe that VMware is perfectly positioned to solve this problem, because we can see, we're in the guts of the machine, and we can see the activity of both the host machine and the virtual machines. But it's not just a technical problem, because some of our solutions like Cloud Health and VRails operations provide some elements to those solutions. But the extent of the problem is a significant cost to organizations. And again, if we can repurpose that infrastructure, those compute resources for productive workloads, then companies, again, will need fewer IT infrastructure to run their workloads, because now they're maximizing the productivity of that infrastructure. So we're working on that, how we can solve that problem for our customers.
Great. Well, I've got a lot more questions, but it seems so to many of you. You've got some great questions coming in. I want to get to as many of those as possible. Keep them coming. One of them is a great question that I'm going to stick with you, Nicola, around how do we, what are the metrics for success with sustainability? How do you measure how we're doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, first of all, if we think about what carbon reduction means, like how it's achieved in our customers' environments. It's really being able to maximize the productivity of the infrastructure and make sure that infrastructure is highly energy efficient. So as we're moving customers from old infrastructure that is less powerful and takes more energy per workload into more upgraded infrastructure that's more energy efficient, uses less data center space, less cooling, et cetera. So really metricing those. So as we do projects, when we do a data center consolidation project, let's figure out, well, what was the carbon footprint before they did the consolidation, and what was the carbon footprint afterwards? So we can start to build up some metrics in terms of energy use, carbon, and then can we build that into the solutions themselves so they become energy and carbon aware? And even an idea of, well, am I using the compute and memory resources productively, or do I have some stranded capacity here? So there's a whole myriad of metrics that we can work on. Also with our app modernization, for example, can we architect applications that are compute resource efficient? So optimizing the use of CPU memory and storage. I think if you think about mobile phones, right, all the apps running on those have to be aware of the energy they're using, because otherwise it draws down the battery. I think people had a bad experience with Adobe Flash, and even Apple refused to use it. And so can we build some best practices and metrics around, well, what does it mean to architect, code, and design an application to be compute efficient? And therefore, now you can run more of those applications on the same IT infrastructure and shrink that down. So and that's some of the work that Victor's doing with the research group to figure out what those metrics are and how do we make them not only visible, but then put them into smart analytics so we can actually, it can inform action.
And VMware just issued its most recent annual global impact report, which I'm guessing is going to have a lot of metrics and stats about trends in year-over-year performance and against commitments. And if it's like so many other impact reports, I haven't read it yet, but I guess you'll find a lot of that there, Nicola?
I would say that on the internal operations and our supply chain, there's definitely stories about some of the anecdotes around our sustainable innovation in our products. You'll find some of that there, but I think there's a lot more to come. So looking forward to the conversation next year as well.
Yeah, and Victor, any further things on metrics from your end?
Well, so in general, metrics and benchmarks for systemic computational efficiency. That means each software component would have something that expresses the things that are not currently captured by the dollar cost or the monetary cost. CO2 footprint, e-waste. But I want to add that the metrics and benchmarks are one of the 3 research areas that we propose to be researched by the academic groups that we hope they would respond to the NSF VMware solicitation that I mentioned earlier. So
Jack,
we'll see what comes up, and hopefully next year we'll know better about it.
Yeah, Jackie, how do you measure metrics on sustainability? How do you measure success?
So we measure success in a couple different ways. We measure the number of institutions that are using our solutions, our courses, and our software. We measure the amount of students who are participating in getting those skills, whether they're the foundational skills or those skills that are aligned to a certification. We measure badges and certification attainment. And we've just started, and I hope in a year from now, I'll be able to share a little bit more about employment data. So we want to make sure how many people are actually getting jobs, not necessarily at VMware, but are getting jobs in the field that they've studied for, or they're applying those types of skills that they're learning through IT Academy and academic software licensing, that they're applying it in the workforce.
Yeah, one of the things that we as a society have been looking more at is this is diversity, equity, and inclusion, bringing more people, and particularly in tech, it's been a concern of how do we bring in more people from disadvantaged communities, people of color, into the tech world. What's the role of the Academy in that score?
We're very mindful of that particular piece. Oftentimes we work with colleges and universities or school systems that may not be in the richest neighborhoods, if you will, or more diverse communities and community colleges. So we are selective in terms of who participates in our program to make sure that we do get a diverse population. We also partner with nonprofits. So we've recently partnered with Women Who Code. We've had some activities with other organizations in other parts of the world, in Brazil, Women in Tech. So we are trying to understand how can we encourage young women and underrepresented minorities to participate in our programs, and again, capture some hope that the skills that they can learn can bring a different tomorrow for some of them.
Victor, somebody asked, how do you ensure that code consumes as few infrastructure resources as possible? You know, we have bloated software, we also have bloated hardware, also bloated software. What are you doing there?
Yeah, that's a big question, and that is actually not an easy thing to do. For example, if somebody if I would have a code and I put on purpose something just to test it, to put something that is for sure not useful, that's easy to detect. But if there is something that we don't know, it's very hard to figure out. That's why we propose to do research in these methods. Maybe I can actually take the opportunity to answer one of the questions that were raised here, which is, you know, what are the new methods, new efforts to ensure that code consumes? Well, there are quite a few things emerging, and just wanted to give you an example that I'm really excited about. It's the challenge from the explosion of workloads computing machine learning programs. So one of the new techniques that is emerging is what's called ablation analysis, which aims to detect the parts of the deep learning model that contribute very little to the overall learning of a system. So it is estimated that this technique can reduce significantly the GPU, graphic processor unit demand for the machine learning workloads. Basically, this part looks at the very fringe of maybe recognizing faces or recognizing natural language that you can actually not use it and have almost the same results. And that's in a nutshell a new technology which is called, as I said, ablation analysis.
Great. Nicola, somebody asked, have customers always been interested in sustainability, or is this a new focus for many? And if it is new, why do you think priorities may have shifted?
That's a great question. I would say that it's been there for maybe, to some extent, for maybe the last 10, 15 years, but I would say it was with the early adopters. So your Unilevers, your Patagonias of the world, who I would say their leadership very much saw not only the challenge that the world is facing and the importance of addressing those challenges, but also the business opportunity for doing that. If you think about Patagonia, I mean, they've sort of changed how they make their clothing and the materials they make it from, and how it's become lightweight, and that ended up being a competitive differentiator for them. But I would say for the mainstream companies, there's been a growing awareness, maybe pressure from consumers, pressure from employees, pressure from investors that have kind of almost forced them to look at this. And the way I see it is, it's almost like in the days in the 80s, right, with Deming and quality, is that no companies were looking at quality. It wasn't on their radar until all of a sudden the Japanese were saying, hey, we're making a better mousetrap from that. And I see sustainability as a driver for better innovation and a means for innovation. So I think that whole pressure we were talking about earlier, the drivers earlier, has force more and more companies to embrace this. And of course, once they get there, then they start to see the opportunity. Yeah.
I'll take a stab actually at that too, because I've been looking at this for a long, long time. But I think one of the things that's happened in my mind is that the conversation is kind of flipped from what is business doing to the environment, or what is business doing to change the climate more specifically, to what is the climate doing to business. And so now it's less about doing well by doing good or doing the right thing, or even saving money or generating new revenue. It's actually much more about risk, financial risk, right to operate risk, reputational risk, stranded asset risk, supply chain continuity risk, and on and on. And I think that's where a lot of customers, companies are seeing a big shift. And so now they're turning to their partners and suppliers and saying, hey, I've got a problem here. What are you going to do to help me solve it? Are you experiencing that? Oh, go ahead, Jackie.
Oh, I was just going to add, I think even if you widen the net of what sustainability means, even beyond the climate piece, I think sustainability is table stakes now for corporations who want to do business in the world. You see different funds coming up from an ESG perspective and others. So I think it's not only the right thing to do. I think there's a shift from a business perspective that it's now table stakes to engage and participate in this. I don't know, Nicola, if you see that from your particular lens, but I can tell as a sustainability from a talent perspective, businesses, governments are all looking at how do I get the right talent? How do I help my communities? How do I have diversity? And I see that in the same conversation with some of the topics you're familiar with, Nicola.
Well, I would imagine what you're doing, Jackie, also impacts so many companies, tech companies in particular, but companies across the spectrum are trying to figure out how do we attract the next generation of talent, and how do we retain the current generation of talent, and in some cases that's obviously, compensation packages can only go so far, particularly in a highly competitive landscape. Everyone sort of, there's an arms race there, but at some point it's also, and free haircuts and rides home and all those kinds of things back when we used to go to an office, or another thing. But it's also, what are the values of the company we're working for? You must get that in your academy.
Oh, definitely. When you look at trends from generations and what people are looking at, people not only want to do well for their own economy, their own self, but they also want to feel like they're making a difference. So you can see that over and over again. I bet if you asked everybody on this panel, we would all say, well, why do you do it? Well, because it's the right thing to do. It's good. It feeds my soul. And I also have a good life as a result of kind of the choices I'm making and where I've been hired. But the next generation, in particular, millennials, are looking for not only I enjoy doing it, but it also is good.
Yeah. Well, I want to get a couple more questions in the last 6 or so minutes we have together. But and the first one is maybe on the dark side of this. What keeps you up at night around sustainability and as it relates to VMware? Nicola?
What keeps me up at night is that we need to go faster. That clearly, I think that the writing's on the wall with the fires in California, the increased storms, flooding, et cetera, that I think it's almost literally and figuratively lit a fire under people, that they recognize that climate change is not something that's going to happen in 2100. It's not something that's going to happen for their grandchildren, but it's something that's happening in the here and now, and that we don't have a lot of time to take action. And so really trying to bring everybody along and speed up the recognition that this can be good for business. This isn't something that's always going to be a cost center or philanthropic endeavor. But if we can show the business value of, say, sustainability innovation, that can help us go much faster and scale much more quickly than we can do if it's just a philanthropic endeavor.
Yeah. Victor, what keeps you up at night?
Well, some researchers or many researchers do not have great nights sometimes. But so we in research looking at the longer term and concerns, as I said, about scalability and where do we go ultimately with this explosion, this growth, exponential growth. Now, there are questions that are more deeper than the technical technology issues that I mentioned before. And the deeper questions that are really hard to tackle is what is the usefulness of computation versus what is the intrinsic cost. And the big question there is it even possible to figure out what is the minimum amount of computation needed for a particular, information processing task? That's a big one, and I'm thinking about it quite often.
Yeah. Jackie, what's your 2 a.m. thought?
Zombies. No, just kidding. It's not zombies, although I would say there is a little bit of zombies, because when I think of zombies, and Nicola, as you've educated me on it today, it's not using kind of the resources that we have available in the most impactful way. When I think of that in the work that I do, that's students in a classroom. So when I sleep at night, I think about the person who is going back to school, maybe changing careers, and they're going back because they want an opportunity. What keeps me up at night is the pace of change is happening so fast, and we have to go faster and faster and faster. And the job market is changing. The skills that we are expecting, both from a technical and a durable skills, continue to evolve. What keeps me up at night is, am I and my team, and are we doing a service to that person in that classroom? Are we giving them that opportunity? Are we creating that hope? That's what keeps me up at night. And I hope it always keeps me up at night, quite candidly.
Well, I hope you get some good night's sleep out of that. Let's close it out with some optimism here. I want to ask each of you, what are you excited about right now? When we meet back here at VMworld 2021 to talk about sustainability at VMware, what do you want to talk about, Nicola?
Well, I'd love to talk about some of the sustainability innovation that we accomplished over the past year around zombies, around stranded assets, around zero carbon clouds, around more efficient coding or modernized apps. So that would be wonderful for me. And I'm just excited about the energy that I'm seeing inside VMware, the support for this, the hunger really for when people realize that they can, again, do well for VMware while having a sustainability impact through our solutions for our customers.
Hey, Victor, what are you excited about?
Absolutely. So I'm excited about the fact that so many research groups have already expressed interest in our initiative for sustainable digital infrastructure. They've come and talked to us, really thanking us for doing this. It's beyond the usual excitement of good research. It is about the purpose. And I want to add one more thing that I'm really excited about, that on purpose, we made sure that this funding of all the research in this area, together with NSF, the results of this research will be dedicated to the public, so that the new science and technologies will be used as broadly as possible for reducing the carbon footprint and increasingly digital society. So we are very excited that everybody could use it, and we hope we get great results from all the researchers that we will support.
Yeah, great. Jackie, will give you the last word. What are you excited about that we can talk about at 2021?
I'm excited that next year we'll be able to come together, and we'll be able to talk about how when we come together, when we work together, we can see all that's possible through our public-private partnerships in solving some of the biggest problems that we have in the world.
Well, that's a great punctuation on which to end this. Thank you to Nicola Peill-Moelter, Victor Firoiu, and Jackie Barker for a great conversation. Thank you all